Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. People join late, that's no problem. As always, this meeting is being recorded so we can share it with the folks who weren't able to join us. But thank you all of you for being here and being so prompt. We're really excited for this fourth and final learning session. There will, of course, be one more session in May when we'll be making some funding decisions, but this will be the final learning session. Skylar, we can go to the next slide. Great. So this is just to sort of orient us. The slide should look pretty familiar at this point. We've come a long way from session 1. As you can see, we are now here at session 4. So today we'll be taking a systems level approach to hearing about interventions. So using data and policy, scaling what works. And it's exciting. We have some good synergy between our two speakers today. And so they'll be talking about how data and policy work together. You can go to the next slide. So again, this one should also look pretty familiar to you. This is just showing us where we started and where we are now. Apologies that I see it still says today, session 1. We are on session 4. It is April 22nd. That is the day. Data policy and scaling what works. And as you can see, next month on May 20th will be session 5, funder discussion and decision making. So as a quick reminder, that will involve hearing pitches from some of the strongest proposals that were submitted in response to the RFP. And then the funders will all make a decision on who they would like to award grants to. And we'll give you plenty of more information as we get closer to that date, but we will be offering anyone who wants to come into GMA's offices in downtown Boston to gather in person for a meal and lively discussion. Next slide. Great, so this is who we have today. I know they both put in the chat as well. We have Jerome, who's the executive director. Again, apologies if that says Haley House. He is from the Housing Navigator, Massachusetts. And Maritza is here as the interim CEO and chief operating officer of Citizens House and Planning Association. So I'm going to hand it over to Jerome, who is not from Haley House, but he's going to give us a great presentation.
Thank you so much. I'm going to actually share my screen. You did get the H right, so that's a good start. I am with Housing Navigator. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah, excellent. Looking great.
All right, perfect. Excited to be here. We're going to be talking about using affordable housing data to inform policy, public policy, as well as understanding the need for data that drives policy. And at Housing Navigator, we believe that it is not a demand problem, right? It is a data and policy problem. We were actually created as a result of policy. And so we're gonna talk a little bit about that. I have my colleague with me today, Abby Warner. She'll introduce herself in a second. But what we want to really focus on is exploring how real-time data can really drive public policy and resource allocation, with an emphasis on the role in shaping effective advocacy strategies for affordable housing. We are what Boston Globe calls the Zillow for affordable housing in the state of Massachusetts. My background is economic development, housing, and technology. I previously came from the governor's office in New York State, Governor Hochul, and looking forward to talking a lot about how we've been able to scale the work that we're doing here at Housing Navigator. Abby?
Thank you, Jerome. It's great to meet everyone in the room. I think I have myself on the presenter view, so I can't actually see everyone yet, but excited to, to kind of lead a few sessions here. I'm Abby Warner, Director of Data Research and Compliance. I have been with the organization full-time for going on 3 years, but really came to Housing Navigator back in its founding days as a graduate student at the time, helping to form some of the early data processes and really to clean and to get us to a place where we can be this great resource, which you'll learn about in a few minutes here.
Thank you, Abby. I'm going to go ahead and jump in to talk about equitable solutions for really looking at the data gap and where we see that. We believe that real-time housing data really provides critical insights to addressing information inequities, enabling policymakers to develop solutions for affordable housing, specifically targeting vulnerable communities. And when we think about vulnerable communities, we're really talking about area median income of between 30 and 50%. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how we use data here at Housing Navigator. And you're probably wondering who we are. So we build technology for public good. And so our mission is really to connect people with a place to call home. We do that through technology and really providing access to affordable housing information and resources across the state. Abby's going to talk a little bit in a few minutes about our impact and our data across the state. But I really want to talk about equity and what really grounds us here at Housing Navigator and how we really use our tools to really inform affordable housing and promote fairness and transparency in the affordable housing market. So you're probably wondering, how were we built? How did we get to where we are? We are a relatively young organization, but our impact has been tremendous. We actually begin with a group of like-minded folk around 120 organizations, understanding the need to really bring together a resource around affordable housing and make sure that people who are looking for affordable housing has access to affordable housing, and aggregating that data in one centralized place. And so that is really how we came about. What really brought us forward was our partnership with CHAPA, who's going to be coming up next, talking about policy. They were our fiscal sponsor, and they actually help create Housing Navigator through a partnership through policy. And so we launched our search engine in early 2021. And the policy that drove the revenue that helps support us today is called the Qualified Allocation Plan. And there's a mandate for property owners and managers to comply with the state in inputting and identifying affordable housing units across the state. And so we recognize the need for really leveraging data to drive decision-making. And so in 2024, we launched what's called our Data Open Door series. And Abby's going to talk a little bit about some of that research that we've done. But one of the first things we did was we recognized the impact of data. And so on our website today, you can actually see our interactive public-facing data dashboard. And that data is being used by over 261 communities across the Commonwealth. And so where are we today? Well, we are excited to share that we are in partnership with the State Office of Livable Communities, Executive Office of Livable Communities, really thinking about sort of kind of the next phase in the role Housing Navigator can play in affordable housing, but specifically around what's called the Common App. To centralize the application process for when you're applying for affordable housing. And one of the big initiatives we're undertaking now is really, how do we share our data and do it in a way that is seamless, not only for localities and planners and the state, but for all those who use and leverage our data, and continuing to enhance our search engine. And consumer education is also one of our key priorities. And so, Abby, you're jumping in on the next slide, I believe. So I'm just going to introduce really the fact that we have now become the #1 affordable housing search engine in the Commonwealth. This tool did not exist for 35 years. Imagine that, for 35 years. And so this here is just a snapshot of our homepage. You can access us through multiple devices. We are not an app, so you don't have to download us. Our website is dynamic and scalable. And so one of the exciting things we've done early on is we understand that leveraging our GIS to really present a overall geographical view of our data from a map. And that map is fully interactive for renters. And so I'm going to kick it over to Abby, and then I'll jump back in to show you guys some really, really exciting things that we're doing as we think about scaling for the next phase of Housing Navigator. Abby?
Thank you, Jerome. So we wanted to highlight a little bit of our current scale. As Jerome showed in the timeline, we haven't been around for a really long time. At the same time, we've got a pretty good amount of years now where we've been operating. So whether that was leading up to the launch of our search engine in 2021 or beyond, how we've measured our success has really focused on engagement with the people that we are here to serve, and that is folks looking for housing who are oftentimes either in the sort of lower income groups of less than 30% household income AMI or 30 to 50%, as Jerome mentioned. So we're seeing really a lot of weight towards folks that are within those income areas. But as a whole, really more than 400,000 users per year. And this is unique users. So we have seen this skyrocket over the years, initially just a few thousands to what you're now seeing on this page. The same goes with just our comprehensive capture of the affordable inventory that is out there. So we aren't just, first and foremost, we are a tool to make things transparent for people who need an actionable way to a home. But at the same time, we are this comprehensive inventory of data, of information that exists for policymakers and others to be able to understand the count of affordable housing, rental housing specifically. So we have seen all of these numbers across the board go up. Thank you to the QAP mandate. We are seeing a full 100% compliance, meaning that we are capturing all lotteries, open and closed wait lists, and we even have a pretty high uptick of property owners and managers using features to bring even more attention to actionable opportunities, so immediate vacancies. If you explore our website, you will see some of this, but we do our best to highlight as much and as many ways as possible how renters can find a place to call home and quickly. Overall, this relies on a lot of partnership, as we've discussed, and we're seeing over 150 owners and managers that are not just mandated to work with us, but that want to work with us, that see value and see a return in being able to fill their vacant units. And so that 150 figure is a labor of love over the years of expanding our reach. And as Jerome mentioned earlier, we do have ways that we are starting to visualize over the past few years the data behind it all. So the inventory information, the raw data that informs and feeds things like our search engine or like our free public interactive dashboard here, which we took the initiative to launch in early 2024 during what we call Data Reveal Day that has continued with an annual relaunch and update of resources that are available to the public right now on our website. So we have heard of many, many advocates, researchers, even folks in the policymaking space who rely on this information. And what we're showing here is just a summary. If you explore this after our session, you'll see there's a lot more covered as well. And you can segment this at very different levels beyond just the statewide data. So we're very proud to be able to put this information and to invest in creating tools like this to ensure that the public have access to things that really help them in each of their unique circumstances. Next slide, please. And in addition to the dashboards that we put out there, we have partnered on various research projects. Most recently, we worked closely with MAPC, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, which some folks may be familiar with, to author a report that measured the affordable housing gap across the state of Massachusetts. So we'll actually be presenting this at the upcoming Boston Area Research Initiative Conference in early May. Through Northeastern University, and we're very excited to continue to ramp up the awareness of some of the insights found within this report and with other initiatives that we have taken over the last few years, now that our data following our launch years has become this reliable and important resource that can now inform measurement of where we are falling short. So that I want to emphasize is one of the biggest really values that our information can have right now, in addition to continuing to find homes for folks, is to plug back in and to help inform this measurement of where we might be falling short, what types of units, where in terms of AMI and household incomes are people feeling this the most, and in what municipalities. So we are getting closer to authoring and co-authoring reports or studies with different big names that are able to move policy forward. So some of the other highlights you'll see here are that we can plug back into communities who in sort of this continued cycle of being able to advocate for housing in your own neighborhood. We are able to kind of provide momentum to some of the grassroots local initiatives as well. So the photo here shows a few different sort of infographics that we've put out into communities, and have also sort of passed across the desk of various researchers to continue to, again, move that needle forward. Next slide, please. And really thinking about the advocacy piece of this. So beyond just authoring research that sits in a long report, that is not actually making it into the hands of people. So really ensuring that the folks who are in positions to either direct resources efficiently are aware of these gaps is key and critical, and something we are actively working on. But also we are trying to actually plug into communities and ensure that feedback loops are created, so that when we are studying something or using our data, that it's not just the few of us that sit here at Housing Navigator as full-time staff, but that folks out there that we work with in an advisory capacity, or service providers who are really actively training folks on how to use our search engine, are also equipped with this information at a broader level. That, for instance, someone who resides in Jamaica Plain, actually their neighborhood or their municipality of Boston may be falling short in certain areas, that more 2 bedrooms should be built and such. So we're really finding a lot of potential, and a lot of really unique potential, I should say, in how Housing Navigator can provide information that fills a huge gap in where policy should be made. Next slide, please. And I'll throw it back to Jerome to expand a bit more.
Thank you. And I wanted to add that one of the things that we are trying to do is really take our technology and meet unmet needs and gaps in the housing market. So we have an initiative going on right now with victims against domestic violence, what we call closed referrals. Today, Housing Navigator does not list closed referrals on our website. However, they came to us because they have a need to have a tool like Housing Navigator to be able to manage those listings. And so we are now thinking about, how do we white label our technology and make it more accessible for other needs across the state and across the country? One of the things we're really excited about is scaling models and looking at what we're calling the first of its kind in the nation, the Data Exchange Network. And this is a centralized, an opportunity to centralize data from multiple sources to really bring data from our housing partners, from the state, from property owners and managers, to really enhance and drive decision-making when it comes to data. So really centralizing that data, finding a way to securely share that data with tiered access that meets compliance, that helps to automate the data sharing process through integration points. And we today just began the process with our, what we're calling our MVP, our minimum viable product, around how to implement a tool like this with one of the largest housing property owners and managers in the state of Massachusetts. So what I thought would be helpful is if I showed you just a quick video about the Data Exchange Network and what it is. And so I am going
Housing Navigator Massachusetts.
Enlarge this so you can sit back, relax. Hopefully you're having lunch right now, and enjoy this quick video. What is the Data Exchange Network?
Presents the DEN, the Data Exchange Network. The DEN is a secure, private data sharing platform built for trusted housing professionals who rely on accurate, up-to-date, affordable housing information. Powered by Housing Navigator's unique affordable housing data set, the DEN brings together information that's never been shared this way before. It connects researchers, property owners, and government partners through aggregated, anonymous data sharing, helping everyone make smarter, faster, data-driven decisions. The DEN includes key affordable housing data that partners rely on, like unit mix, AMI, rents, and program types such as lottery, first come, first served, short wait list, age restricted, rent based on income, and fixed below market rent units. With the DEN's zero-copy cloning framework, nothing is transferred. You maintain ownership of your own private data, while gaining access to shared information to gain insights from multiple housing partners across the network. Built on a modern, future-ready platform, the DEN's advanced architecture adds encryption, governance, and automation to reduce manual processes while meeting data security and compliance standards. The DEN also connects seamlessly with trusted third-party systems like Yardi and RealPage, giving developers, property owners, and managers a direct link between their internal systems and the Housing Navigator data network. The DEN is an integrated partner of the future Massachusetts Affordable Housing Common Application. It's easy to join the Housing Navigator data network. We offer 3 flexible service plan options designed for different organizational needs. Community for researchers, nonprofits, municipalities, and small towns. Professional for housing partners. Enterprise for state government with live data transfer, predictive analysis, and full system integration. The DEN, a trusted, secure way to exchange housing data and drive collaboration across the affordable housing ecosystem.
So I wanted to take a moment to share that with you all. And hopefully that was helpful to get a sense of what the DEN is. And I will end with this slide, really the impact all of you could have, and really helping Housing Navigator and other partners really close that data gap, and the role that funders play, which is critical in supporting infrastructure improvements, enhancements, and real-time housing data to really drive effective policy decision, and really helping us expand partnerships through enhanced data collaboration. And so we hope that you will join us on this journey, and hopefully we have time for questions at the end. And thank you so much for this opportunity.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jerome and Abby. That was great. If anyone has any burning questions, we can take 1 or 2 now, and then we'll jump over to Maritza. But if not, there'll also be opportunity afterwards for the entire panel. I can't quite see everyone all at once, so if anyone does have a burning question, please feel free to just take yourself off mute and chime in. Okay, if not, then I'm going to hand it over to Maritza, and like I said, we'll have plenty of time afterwards to ask all 3 of our panelists some questions.
Thank you, Rachel. Can you see my screen? Let's see.
Yes.
In presentation mode. Okay, actually, let me.
Perfect.
Is it still available?
Yep.
Okay.
It was in presentation mode, but now it's in.
Sorry.
It's okay. There you go.
I think in order for me to see my notes, I may need to do. Would it be possible for you to share the slides for me so I could? I'm only on my laptop this morning because my my monitor is broken.
Yep, no problem.
Sorry about
So
that.
I can pull those up.
I appreciate it. So sorry about that.
It's hard to see the notes when you're the one sharing the screen.
I know. You need multiple screens. So Thank you, everyone, for inviting us to join you today. My name is Maritza Crossen. I am the interim CEO and COO at Citizens Housing and Planning Association. Our name is more widely known as CHAPA, and we are delighted to join you today to share a little bit about who we are, our policy advocacy work that we do at the state and local level, and why supporting advocacy is so critical in this moment. Next slide, please. Thank you. So, celebrating 59 years of creating alliances that drive change, CHAPA is a statewide nonprofit housing advocacy organization in Massachusetts. We were born out of a small group of community leaders who understood that housing was a critical issue of the civil rights movement in 1967. And the world that we envision really is a commonwealth made up of communities in which every person has a safe, affordable, and welcoming place to live. The way we do our work is really under what we call an umbrella. We are considered the umbrella organization for affordable housing in Massachusetts. And what that means is that we work with any organization or person or entity that touches affordable housing in any way. And we welcome them under our big tent. We bring together for-profit and nonprofit developers, lenders, architects, community leaders, tenant advocates, tenants themselves, all around our table to build effective consensus-based policies and programs that create and preserve affordable housing across Massachusetts. Next slide, please. So we have a bold plan to cultivate a stronger housing ecosystem statewide in the next decade so that all of our people, towns, and neighborhoods can thrive. We share in the governor's goal of creating 222,000 homes by the year 2035. And we know to get there, we need programs and policies in place that will allow for the preservation and production of affordable housing. In our history of CHAPA, our efforts have led to historic passages of things like Chapter 40B, which creates affordable rental and deed-restricted homeownership units across communities all over the state, as well as a preservation tool called Chapter 40T that protects tenants from displacement when a property's affordability requirements expire. These are strong examples of what CHAPA's advocacy has created, which has resulted in hundreds and thousands of homes built and preserved. But I want to share with you a few more recent wins that we've had that is going to also allow us to meet that goal of the 222,000 homes. Next slide, please. This one may be familiar to many of you if you live in the greater Boston area or read the Boston Globe at any point. It is always on the news in the newspaper in the past couple of years, called the MBTA Communities Law. CHAPA led the successful advocacy and actually drafted the language for this policy, which took years to develop and to gain traction for. And it happened around that table under our big tent, under the umbrella, where we were recognizing that strict local zoning policies were limiting opportunities for people by preventing the construction of anything other than single-family homes on large lots in most of our communities in Massachusetts. So in 2021, then Governor Charlie Baker signed into law the MBTA Communities Act. And this asks every municipality that has an MBTA station or adjacent to a station to create at least just one zoning district in their community that allows for multifamily buildings. Continuing on that success, next slide, please. In 2024, we led the successful advocacy for the Affordable Homes Act, a comprehensive and historic housing bond bill in Massachusetts with over $5 billion in capital funding. And the programs highlighted here are just a few of the programs that were funded through this. This bond bill was unique in that it also included up to 50 policies and initiatives that when it was created to increase production, preserve affordable homes, and support renters and homebuyers. It was designed to move from policy to production by streamlining development, modernizing public housing, advancing zoning reforms, and expanding homeownership opportunities. And it really creates a critical moment for impact. Public investment sets the foundation, but philanthropic support is needed to build local capacity and ensure that these policies translate into real homes and communities. Because there is a real gap between policy passage and implementation. These production decisions are actually made at the local level by local residents who decide in community meetings, in town meetings all across the Commonwealth, whether or not their community is going to say yes to housing or no to housing. So this is why, next slide. In 2018, CHAPA created something called the Municipal Engagement Initiative, which is also known as MEI. This was created to complement the state advocacy we were doing, but on the local level. And it was created to provide local resident-led pro-housing coalitions with the tools, the knowledge, the history and background as to why our communities look the way we do, and the language to say yes to more housing in their communities. This was created to elevate those pro-housing voices that are often drowned out in those community meetings by the NIMBYs and give them that voice to say yes to the opportunities that are presented to them at the local level. MEI to this point has worked in over 50 communities across the Commonwealth. And our success is not just measured in housing production, which you can see a few examples of that on the slide, but really in the critical steps that communities take towards expanding affordable housing opportunities. And this includes things like creating affordable housing trusts, zoning changes, and hiring dedicated municipal housing staff. And this also shows some of our the recent production that we've done in communities. This has also led, with our success, next slide, to creating the MBTA Technical Assistance Program. So CHAPA successfully advocated for and wrote the policy for MBTA, and we recognize that communities may need some assistance in making sure they're meeting the compliance requirements. So building off that success of MEI, we created this program to support the municipal leaders at the local level, as well as the town planners, on the implementation of this law. We worked with 90 communities across the state, and we have a 97% success rate in their implementation. This program consisted of cohort meetings, monthly learning sessions, and direct support. So our staff would go into these communities, present at their town meetings, sit at the desk next to their planner to explain to them how they were going to become into compliance, but also what it means to not be compliant with this law. And the districts that were created in these communities now have the capacity to build over 180,000 homes. Next slide, please. And then further building off of this success of both MEI and MBTA-TA. Oh, sorry, next slide. Thank you. Oh, it looked, I think we skipped one. Thank you. We created the pro-housing resident lead coalitions through MEI. And then we created pro-housing local official leaders through the Massachusetts Housing Leadership Academy. This is also because working with these communities through their MBTA community work, we were recognized that these local leaders also needed that knowledge, the background, the historical knowledge as to why these communities look the way they do, as well as the language to really advocate for more housing in their communities for their residents. So we launched this program in January of 2026. We had 122 applicants for our first cohort that had 30 spots. And we just opened up our second application round for our second cohort, and we already have over 100 applications. So it's really showing us that there's really this need at the local level for this type of support to really educate, engage, and help these communities activate more housing in their cities and towns. Next slide, please. So this brings us to the current political legislative moment we are in now. At this point, everyone understands that we are experiencing significant housing challenges in Massachusetts, and it's no longer the experts in the field that are ringing this alarm. CHAPA is now working directly with local business owners, heads of large institutions like hospitals and universities around our housing challenges because they are now falling on their desks as well. They need housing for their employees. They need housing to keep the incredible students that come to our state every year to get an education to stay in Massachusetts so that we can continue to be a thriving place to live. We have some major housing bills before us, as well as a strong signal from the governor's FY27 budget that housing is a top priority for her as well, and it remains a top priority. So what's at stake are several bills that will allow for more multifamily zoning changes throughout the state. One of our favorites is called YIGB. It stands for Yes in God's Backyard. This will allow for multifamily housing to be built on religiously owned properties across the state and has the potential to unlock 250,000 homes, as well as a tax income for the communities where these properties were previously not paying taxes. We also have some permitting reform bills that will allow for production to move faster, creating more predictable requirements at the local level, both so the communities and the developers, when they come together for a proposal, will understand what's expected and can plan for that so that things can move faster. And we at CHAPA are also strongly advocating for increases in the budget for programs that protect tenants and homeowners through things like vouchers, emergency rental assistance, right to counsel, and foreclosure counseling. But we know that this is all happening under a really tight fiscal environment. We know that there are federal cuts that the state, unfortunately, cannot make up for because they're so extreme, and we're going to have to make some difficult decisions. And our job as advocates is to make sure that housing remains a top priority across the board. But there's also that local resistance, as I shared, and also the capacity to implement all of these new policies and programs. So support for advocacy continues to be a priority so that we can continue to ring this alarm and make the case for more housing and why it's now more important than ever for our state. Next slide, please. So where does philanthropy come in and why support for advocacy is so essential in this puzzle? We understand direct services deliver those immediate outcomes, but those outcomes depend on upstream policy. The ability to shelter families, fund vouchers, expand homeownership programs exist because advocacy secured those policies and public funding behind them. Advocacy is really a force multiplier for every philanthropic dollar. One investment in policy change can unlock millions, sometimes billions, in public resources that sustain and scale direct service impact. And without advocacy, systems stall and services will shrink. When policy progress slows, or as we're seeing at the federal level, unfortunately, reversing, providers are left competing for these limited resources rather than meeting this growing demand that we're seeing all over the state. And this is a critical window where policy decisions will shape production for years. As I mentioned before, for this 40B and Chapter 40T and even the MBTA Communities Act, those things take years to put into place. So what gets passed now or what doesn't get passed now, which will determine whether or not we are meaningfully increasing housing supply or remaining constrained. And the local capacity, this is what turns policy wins into real outcomes. So funding that local level advocacy ensures that policy is implemented effectively, translating that legislation into actual homes built and communities being strengthened. Philanthropy plays a unique role that public dollars cannot. Flexible funding allows advocacy organizations to respond to things in real time. We can build those coalitions under that big tent and push for alignment across complex legislative efforts and decisions that we need to be making in this moment. So to close, I just want to uplift that support for advocacy is not separate from direct service. It is what makes it possible to scale. It ensures that the pipeline of resources, programs, and protections continue to grow rather than erode. Again, currently in this moment, we're seeing that now more than ever more important because of what's happening at the federal level. We in Massachusetts can make those decisions to support housing and make sure that we're not leaving anyone behind. So I want to thank you and open it up for questions.
Wonderful. Thank you, Maritza.
You're welcome.
Skylar, you go ahead and unpin everyone just so we can all see each other. And then we're opening it up for questions. So while Skylar does her magic, folks can feel free to raise your hand, just take yourself off mute. You can have questions for either of our panelists.
I have a question.
Please.
This is Christina with the Ludke Foundation. And I really like what you said about not thinking of advocacy organizations as in competition with direct services, but that they have the ability to really to scale them. And in the funding community, we frequently get requests to do things like help build an affordable house. And I'm just curious about are there particular places in the funding of affordable housing where it does make sense for philanthropy to get involved in that direct funding of versus the funding coming from the state and federal level, because there's so much more significant dollars at that level. So I'm just trying to figure out like the ROI of where philanthropy dollars should go in the affordable housing conversation, if that makes sense.
That's a good question. And I'm assuming that's for me. That's a good question. And I would say my first answer is that we need it all, unfortunately. So it needs to be funding for the development, but also for the programmatic work, for the policy work, for the data that Jerome and his team had shared. I think the one that is most challenging is when it's deeply affordable housing that needs services attached, that need to have several different funding mechanisms to work all of its magic at once. Those are often things that happen literally at the last moment. You're looking at something and realizing that you're short. And so philanthropy dollars dollars, I think, could be really impactful there for that deeply affordable housing, because the subsidies can only take us so far. And even now, to be eligible for a voucher, you can still have a pretty high income, and it's those deeply affordable, very low income households that really need the extra assistance.
That's super helpful. Thank you.
Hi, Vince.
Hi, how you doing? Can I comment on what you just said, Maritza?
Please go ahead.
Yeah,
You're the expert.
first of all, I think this is a great session because it's kind of emphasizing some of the ways to drive policy development, through data and engagement. And so I just want to thank all the presenters. It's just terrific that we're doing this. I think on the issue of the role of philanthropy in providing, direct housing assistance. I mean, I think it's really important. I agree with you, Maritza, all the above. And at the same time, it's a huge lift, to cover rental assistance and services. It's just a vast funding need. And I think the leverage that's provided by data-informed analysis that drives policy advocacy is extremely important. That philanthropy can do that and has done that, and by driving the policy development tools like what the Housing Navigator is doing and other similar efforts. It's a huge leverage provided for the grant making community, and anything else they can you can do to assist in the direct services is also terrific. But I wouldn't neglect the powerful influence that policy making and policy advocacy has.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any other questions? Judy, I see you popped one in. Do you want to just ask it to the group?
Yeah, I was just wondering, you were talking about the ADUs and the MBTA communities, which were both passed in our town, but not without a lot of conversation. And I'm just wondering, is there a way to track what's been produced or at least permitted as a result of those two? And has it met the expectations that you all had?
The state actually has a pretty amazing tracker on their website that we refer to often. And to answer your second question, yes, absolutely. These things do take time, and this law is fairly new. 2021 is not too long ago when you think about housing production. And it did take the communities, some of them just met their deadlines just last year. So the fact that there are so many plans in place and actually, nails and hammers in the ground happening across communities all over the state is really meeting our expectations. Of course, we would like it to be a little bit faster, but that is also just the nature of development and the environment we're in right now with costs and kind of a unstable environment as it results in development and labor and those types of things.
Ask another question?
Please, yeah. And I see some people just coming off and on mute. If you have a question, please pop your hand up. Feel free to chime in.
Okay.
Yeah,
and
go
this
ahead.
is either for Jerome or Maritza or really anyone in the group. We hear more and more that the greatest predictor of a child's future is their zip code when they're born. And so I'm just curious about how that plays into when you're choosing where to put new affordable housing. Obviously, we see that the communities where it's most expensive to live are often the communities, though, that have the greatest community assets in terms of school systems and parks and access to green space and things like that. And yet, oftentimes, where you see affordable housing are in the communities that are more affordable than that tend not to have those. So, how do you address that issue in your planning?
Sure, I can take that. and Vince, you're also one of the experts on here, so please chime in whenever you have a chance. But Chapter 40B was really created to help address that issue. So most of the communities that was a law created over 50 years ago, really to address the fact that cities and towns weren't doing their fair share. So if a community doesn't have at least 10% of their housing deemed as affordable, a developer can come in and override local zoning. Because as I mentioned, most of our communities are single family zoned. And so it's a combination. So obviously MBTA communities is helping to combat with creating more multifamily zoning districts. And 40B also does it. It's actually one of our most successful housing policy tools. It's resulted in the most affordable housing production in our state over anything else. And so it goes into those Wellesleys and Dovers and Concords and creates those affordable housing opportunities. I will say what we have seen, sort of anecdotally, but we've done research on it as well, as there is a gap between, creating these affordable homes for these families, for these households, but can they afford to actually live there? And so we are working on that as well. So you have a family living, let's take Concord, for example, and that's wonderful. Can their children afford to participate in the activities that that community is offering? And so it's not a perfect system, but it certainly is, the best system that we currently have, I would say, for addressing the question that you had regarding, and to also say, our goal is to have all of our communities be opportunity communities so that it doesn't have to be that you have to pick and choose. It could be that the household can stay in the community that they may have been raised in, and that's where their family and their network is, but that is also becoming a thriving community. So it's all part of the puzzle. But that is just one tool, is Chapter 40B.
And oftentimes, one of the things that is lost is when you look at your own community, especially communities that oftentimes have restrictions on what can be built and who it can be built for. One of the things we do is we actually shine a light on all of those communities to bring transparency. So in our public data dashboard, each community can literally identify what's there, what's not there, who needs it, and who needs it the most. And they can just filter by their community and see what affordable housing actually exists for the first time. And then where are those gaps? And that's why our data is so important from a research perspective, because we partner with local communities to help advocate for filling those gaps. And so data is so critically important because oftentimes perception becomes reality, even if it's not based in truth. So if I live in a community and I perceive that my community is one way, oftentimes what we're finding is that the data isn't supporting that. And so data serves such a critical role. And I think Abby probably wants to add to that thought.
Yes, I mean, I would also add, although we didn't really list it today on our presentation, one of the most interesting and impactful recent collaborations we've done with our data is actually with the Gateway Cities Innovation Summit through Mass Inc. So that comes out every fall, and it takes a deep dive using our data to help support some of the rental cost burden findings, along with a lot of other resources and just public and private data sources coming together to try and point out, of all of the gateway cities, I think there's 26, how do we kind of look beyond Boston, beyond certain areas to actually understand, for instance, in Lynn, I know the BARI conference that Dewey shared here in the chat, there's someone speaking at the same session as Housing Navigator specifically about Lynn and this exact problem of how certain census tracts within Lynn are seeing housing being built while others aren't. So there's a lot of the findings that can come from all of this, although Housing Navigator, we're not the ones with the shovels in the ground, but we're the ones bringing this information to a lot of folks who are weaving it together, are finding ways to approach and to tackle these sorts of things as they come up. So our focus and our expanding focus has also been to try and make sure we are ingrained in a gateway city strategy. So that's how Housing Navigator is really thinking about this, predominantly in a way that is focused more on our community engagement work. So not quite the sort of upstream data, but bringing the data to people once research and reports are happening. So there's really a full cycle flow we're trying to bring to really feeding back into the community what is already sort of taken through our inventory process, and completing that cycle.
Can I just add one more thing to that too, as it relates to also creating diverse and welcoming communities? We work very closely with an organization called the Partnership for Financial Equity, and every year they do a lending review, a mortgage lending review, to see where mortgages are being applied for in communities across the state, and if that household is a Black or Brown household, and what communities those households are looking for housing in, are actually finding housing in. And there are many communities across the state where there's not a single mortgage by a Black or Brown household being initiated. And so there we have data that's supported every single year. And also where the households are finding opportunities that are affordable and are finding mortgages that they can afford there. So data is such an important part of our tools, and we use it every single day.
Is there a similar, so I live in Maine, I'm from New Hampshire. Is there a similar thing to Housing Navigator in other states? You kind of alluded to the fact that a nationwide model. So I'm just kind of curious what that's like in other places, especially New England, obviously.
So there are a couple across the country, out west, but there really isn't a single platform like Housing Navigator that is readily available. So Peter, one of the things we would like to do is we would like to make our tool available through a toolkit where any state who is dealing with affordable housing that would like to use a tool like Housing Navigator does not have to spend the time, effort, and energy to have to create it, right?
Yeah.
And so bring those best practices forward, give communities and other municipalities across the country an opportunity to have a starting point. Our tool is pretty comprehensive. We're now working with property owners and managers who help input that data through two different councils. We have a property owner and manager council that helps drive our enhancements, as well as a community advisory committee. And these are community organizations and tenant organizations that are helping us really drive the usability of our tool. So we think that, Peter, you're onto something. We think that this should be really a tool available for any union across this country that would like to stand up an affordable housing solution.
Cool, thank you.
I just have a question from a consumer perspective. Say I'm looking for affordable housing, and now we have this wonderful tool which works like Amazon or Zillow, and it's just fast and beautiful. How has life changed for people who are looking for housing now that this system is in place? Have you quantified it in any way, or do you have anecdotal evidence of positive change?
That's actually a great question. I'm going to say a few things, and I'm going to turn it over to Abby, because we actually do annual surveys to try to quantify the impact of our search tool. So I will talk from the perspective of Win Companies, which is one of the largest property owner managers in the state with over 16,333 units on our site. What they shared with us this morning is they are actually seeing such a significant impact from connecting renters with affordable housing opportunities in ways that they had not seen prior to Housing Navigator search tool. So much so that they have jumped in as an early adopter for the data exchange network. And so now we're talking about real-time integration from their property management system so that they can streamline data entry into Housing Navigator. So when you think about lease up time, we think that we're going to be able to close that gap. And I don't have the specific data point yet, but that's really the goal of the data exchange network, is to bring all those data sources to be able to map, to be able to quantify. Because the question I want to ask Philip, is how many people did we place this month, this year, as a result of our search tool?
Yeah.
Anecdotally, the property owners and managers who are using it saying it's working, right? Do I have data to show that? Not until the data exchange network allows us to integrate with their property management system to really see who's being placed where. And then I'll be able to answer that question.
Yeah, and to add to that as well, another piece of the puzzle is in the future, as changes happen with the common application, that's another piece, the application process that captures a lot of those data points that Housing Navigator right now cannot, because where our site ends in the renter experience is linking folks to the opportunity, having accurate data and applications, interlinked. But ultimately, the process right now is beyond our site. So we, up until now, have become a portal that never existed before, when things used to be files in a cart rolled around a service provider's office, to where we are now. But of course, the learning lessons along the way have been, well, hold on now, how do we measure the success here? And thankfully, with all of our owner and manager partners, as Jerome said, that's been a huge way we've measured. Another way is with our annual user survey, which is usually conducted in the fall. And we this year got about 1,500 responses, which was huge, because prior years we've been lucky to get maybe 200-300. So we conduct this survey in a lot of different channels. It's up on our website, social media, through our newsletters, and the majority of folks who answer are renters, about 80%. Another big portion in there is service providers, and many of them fall below 30% AMI, household AMI. So this is actually a huge sample of the lowest income folks searching for housing. And what we learned from this is that we do have confirmation that 95% or more are taking action after finding a home that they like on our site. So that is a huge success metric that we're seeing, that we definitely want to dig into that and actually understand the full cycle beyond just who took action, but who actually found a home. So that's the growing extent we've been able to measure, as well as really asking a lot of questions too, and constantly trying to learn about the experience people are having on the site to control what we can control and make sure that people are able to quickly find what they need. So that's where a lot of our own sort of measurement and success metrics have come from in our first few years, is continuing to refine the experience renters have on our site.
Can I sneak in one global question having to do with Massachusetts? The state has this laudable goal, and it looks like 22,000 deeply affordable new units, 44,000 affordable units. What does the state really need? I mean, if it were to be a wonderful, the best possible place in the world, how many new units does this state really need?
I'll let Maritza go from a policy perspective. We actually released a report that actually answered that question. But Maritza?
I was just going to share that number is what is determined to, as long as we're not losing any units. So that means everything that we currently have cannot, fall off or become unaffordable. So it's kind of like a net number. And so that is the number that, in the background has been calculated, though I think it's, slowly increasing over time. And the affordability levels are actually CHAPA's goals that we've come up with, we are advocating for the governor to also implement that into her priorities as well, because we do need to call out, as I was mentioning earlier, those deeply affordable homes are particularly challenging to create, as well as the affordable homes. Any homes created right now would be a benefit, because we just need more supply. But we do want to make sure that we are calling out, when we talk about this priority, that the affordability levels are really important to our advocacy goals.
So you're saying these are magic numbers that are really good, and if you hit those benchmarks, we'll be in great shape.
We'll be in good shape.
Yeah. And
this is the research that we did recently. We identified that there's a gap of 441,000 units This is pretty comprehensive. It's a pretty large research that's linked on our website. So you can take a deep dive into it. About 194,000 extremely low income affordable units, 81% between that 30 to 50% area median income. And then 25% of municipalities across the state have 75% restriction on what can be built in their communities. And so we see the crisis, like what the problem is. We think the solution is the work Maritza's talking about from CHAPA and the work we're doing, making units accessible once they are built so people know where to find those units. But that information is available.
I'll add too in the link I put in the chat. A good thing to consult would be this report we recently published. This is actually what we're covering at the BARI conference coming up. So we definitely recommend if folks can attend, we'll be there. But one of the biggest findings as well is that and the state actually has a section of their website called Building for All, Understanding the Challenge, if you're curious to see this from sort of a housing and livable communities government page. But 61% of households with extremely low incomes are currently living in unrestricted market rate housing. So that would be like, for instance, folks who are in roommate sharing situations to try and afford what otherwise maybe with actual affordable income restricted housing, they would be able to live in without splitting the cost between so many roommates. So there's a pretty high burden that was measured in this report. And we're hoping to do some more updated research as well, as this was actually a result of working with a lot of different partners to bridge different types of data to try and get that better understanding of exactly where people are spread out among the current housing stock and what could be needed in the future.
We also just published some research. We have a new research center actually at CHAPA, and we just published research on housing vouchers, which is unfortunately very timely because at the federal level, they are talking about things like time restrictions and work requirements. So this is just for Massachusetts. 1 in 11 renter households in Massachusetts rely on a Section 8 voucher. And the dollar amount that would need to be made up if those vouchers were to go, if, for example, there were 2-year time limits, is about $60,000 statewide that the households would need to come up with if that voucher were to be taken away to remain in their homes. So that's the state average. In Greater Boston, that number is closer to 85,000. And so again, if that voucher were to be removed because they've lived there for 2 years, which the average tenure for a voucher holder, I think, is 9 years, that's a whole income and a half for a lot of people to come up with in order to maintain their housing. And so those are market rate homes often that they're using the voucher on top of. So that's also just kind of expressing the deep need of affordability that folks need right now.
Wonderful. And I just want to let folks know we will, of course, share resources afterwards. And if it's okay with our presenters, we can share their slides. I do want to let folks on the line know that I have a couple more slides I'm going to go through with you just to prepare us for the next session. But if anyone has one last burning question for our amazing presenters. Not? Okay, well then we can let them jump off and go eat some lunch. Thank you so much, Maritza and Jerome and Abby. It was really a wonderful, lively discussion. We appreciate your expertise. It was great to hear from you. We really value your time. Thank you.
Thank you all.